Serial Killer series?
I do. There's
cool.
a lot of them out there.
There is. All right, ready to start the show?
Let's do it.
Let's start the show. Welcome everybody that's live on YouTube.
Nightmare365 Studios.
We're officially going to start this show. I'm just going to play the music first.
You got it. Ted Bundy.
Actually, let's just jump right into it. All right, ready? In 3. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Nightmare365 Radio. Matt and Greg here. Greg, the skeptical sidekick.
How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Today we are talking about Case File 46, Ted Bundy. This is going to be part of our serial killer series. And if you want,
It has a nice ring to it.
It does. And there's a bunch of serial killers out there, so we could talk about plenty of them. And I'm sure there's some that we don't even know about because Ted Bundy in himself, I didn't know too much about him. I knew, he was a serial killer, but besides that, I didn't know too much of the details into it. So it's kind of cool when you brought up this topic, and it was on Netflix. So that was a big thing. That's why you wanted to talk about this.
Well, it just got me interested in the topic, and it just got me thinking about him as a serial killer and all the stuff that went along with him. I didn't know that, his first couple victims.
Yeah, some of the backstory, the history on him. So we're going to get into all that. And I don't think we could do, just like any program, which this is what got me into it, like the Netflix documentary series, the 4-parter, whatever you want to call it, that was really well done. But there's so much of detail in the history of himself and serial killers and in these cases that they leave out, just like any other thing that you might see on TV, YouTube, anything like that.
Well, you can't really cover it all.
No.
And if you do, it's going to be a long, long video.
Yeah, so follow along to the serial killer series. This is number 1 of our serial killer series.
Boom! Number 1.
It's all going to be found on Nightmare365.com. That's where we're going to, put it out there. It'll also be on our YouTube channel. So make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the bell for notifications. You can follow in on all the weirdness. And yeah, let's jump into this one, man. This one's a really good one. No. Welcome to Nightmare365.
This is the center of weirdness for the entire planet.
There's tons of unsolved mysteries out there. Witches still exist.
What about monsters?
Do you believe in ghosts?
Bigfoot is not out there.
Bigfoot is definitely out there. UFOs are real.
UFOs might be real.
Do you believe in conspiracies?
I consider myself a conspiracy theorist.
I want to believe in all these case files.
Trust no one. The government lies to you.
We're just two brothers exploring the unexplained, mysterious, and spookiness that lives among us. Today, we are opening up the eerie vault in the Case File 46, Ted Bundy. What?
Serial Killer series.
You like the ring to it.
1.
Why do you keep saying that?
I don't know.
It's a Serial Killer Series 1, that's for sure. So Ted Bundy.
Theodore Bundy, as he was known.
Theodore Bundy. Is that where we're going with? His formal name?
His formal name, Theodore Bundy.
Yeah, I wanted to start off with just some of the history on himself, just because I was not someone who is familiar with the history of Ted Bundy himself.
Okay.
I knew he was a serial killer. I knew it happened sometime in the 70s, 60s. I was unsure. I never, besides watching Dateline and things like that, where you hear stories along the lines of Ted Bundy, Son of Sam, Manson, anything like that, I never really
thought about.
Well, I never dove into it like I did with Bigfoot, UFOs, things like that.
Yeah.
So this was kind of a cool topic to, I guess, shift than our normal, Bigfoot, UFOs, ghost stories, things like that. Paranormal.
I mean, you can kind of say this is paranormal because it's not normal that somebody would do all the shit that he did.
True. And what fascinates me most about him and others like him is the mindset. Because I want to talk about with you, and I haven't talked to you about this before, is just the mindset of somebody like him compared to your regular folks, and just how they always talk about appetites, demons,
sure,
entities. In a lot of his interviews, he always talked about an entity and things like that. So it makes me wonder And I even watched a couple documentaries about like the psychology of serial killers, what makes them tick, is it nature versus nurture? Some of the stuff that we'll get into, but like Greg said, Theodore Bundy, he was born in November 24th, 1946, and he's known as an American serial killer, kidnapper, rapist, burglar, and all the list goes on and on for this guy. And one of the things that we don't know about him and the people that he killed.
Well, yeah, the number varies between who you talk to, because he confessed to a lot. Then
he said around 30.
Yeah, he said around 30, but he couldn't remember. He said, and also
he changed the story a lot.
He changed his story a ton. So I'm gonna say it's upward, probably about 50.
Yeah, and some people even speculated it was almost 100.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, people do, because if you look at when they say he first started, then when like people suspect that he first started varies like between like 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, he never talked about it. He never said like when his first killing was, like how he got into it. He never kind of spilt the beans, so to say, into that world, into that mindset of actually Ted Bundy himself. So most of his victims, well, actually all of his victims were women.
Correct.
Kind of, the same age, in that range of like 18 to 20 something. There was a few, and his last victim was 12 years old, but they were all female, and they were all in like that college age.
Now, do you think they were all in that college age because from his backstory, his history, he didn't have a girlfriend until he went to college?
It could be.
And he developed a relationship with this woman, or this, the college girl.
Right.
They fell in love, and they would talk every day, and then towards like the end of their relationship, they would talk less and less, and he resented her. So do you think he was just trying to get back at, her? Because in one of the interviews, he did say like, he's like, yeah, I thought about killing her.
Yeah, there was a lot of women that, were survivors and that he didn't kill, or that he should have killed, when he was talking, like in his mindset, where he was fooling around with this one girl, and he said like the entity wasn't in him at the time, and he said he didn't kill her, and like let her grow, and she probably never even knew until maybe years later when he was on TV. And that was another thing, like when he finally got caught and arrested and put on trial, it was the first ever American televised like courtroom drama of this type of magnitude, of this type of, event of a killer. And I'll definitely want to go in more into that, because there's parts of the trial that really fascinated me.
Well, another thing that I really didn't know, that he was married.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I before this, like I really didn't think he was married.
Well, that's the thing too. Like most of the time when he was doing, these killings, he had a girlfriend.
Yep.
And then later on there was a woman helping him along in his trial, and he ended up marrying and having a kid.
That's crazy.
And that's what I want to get into, in just like the mindset itself, into like our serial killer series when we do more of this, and really trying to connect each dots. And most people look at Ted Bundy as like, I don't want to say it, but like the Godfather of serial killers.
You think so?
Well, there was a lot of documentaries where they kind of put the correlation into it. I don't know if like you could say like the Godfather, like a Jack the Ripper, Ripper, or something else was, in that realm of like a Ted Bundy.
Or do you think it just got publicized, that it got mainstream, as you would sort of speak, that people wanted to be like him?
I guess I have to word it a little differently, just because, there was other serial killers during this time. And that was
Correct.
Another thing that was kind of fascinating to me. During the 70s, it felt like there was like a wide variety of different serial killers that were happening.
There definitely was.
And which is kind of creepy. I don't know if it had something to do with like the late 60s, 70s kind of vibe here in America.
A little drug use.
It could be that. It could be a number of different things. I don't know. The age of kind of experiments, like the hippies, and, just like the government, the backlash, like with the way our government was treating us. Could this have, been a role into, Ted Bundy and many other serial killers of this time? I don't know, man. This is what really fascinates me again. And getting back to Ted Bundy and kind of the history in himself, and his earlier childhood.
Yeah.
We know like he started out in Washington,
Correct.
trying to, killing people, and how they connected the dots. It's just one of the things that also struck me was that the government, or not the government, but like, like the FBI or local law enforcement had really no communication with each other. If you went outside your jurisdiction, wherever it may be, like it wasn't like, oh man, we got Ted Bundy, he's committed like 3 or 4 crimes.
Up until like 9/11, no agencies really talked to each other.
Yeah, which I think is
no agencies really shared information. There was a database that, a nationwide database, but no one really shared information, even up until 9/11, that no one really talked to about, what cases they had going on, or like what the trends were, stuff like that. So you can connect a couple people in a couple different areas, just like the Zodiac Killer,
That one gets me. That one, the Zodiac Killer, and H.H. Holmes was another one that I like. Ones that I really followed, unlike Ted Bundy, and also Jack the Ripper. Those are like the 3 big ones for me that I was always fascinated with.
Not Son of Sam?
No, not so much. Not even so much Ted Bundy until, really watching some of the stuff and watching his trials, which you could watch all of like the whole trial online and, just some of the interviews. And then that really kind of hooked me into doing this topic. So
he was like a sick guy, though, Ted Bundy.
He was. And, many of his victims, like we said, were female victims, and they regarded him. And this is what I hated on every documentary. They always talked about it like
his
ad
charisma.
nauseum. Yeah, his charisma.
He was good looking.
He was handsome. He didn't fit the profile of being your serial killer. But what fits profiles of being a killer?
I mean, you could kind of tell, though.
No, I know that they have like some type of, like database, now that they could profile things.
Well, yeah, the FBI profiling is pretty good. It's pretty almost spot on.
And that's another thing I want to talk about, because Ted Bundy in the 80s helped, do profiles.
Correct. He helped a lot of things too in like his, I guess you could say previous careers before he started just chopping people up.
Yeah. And another thing, going back to some of his history, in 1975, Bundy was jailed for the first time when he was in Utah, and he had like kidnapped somebody and attempted like a criminal assault, and he became a suspect for even longer homicides into the case, facing murder charges in Colorado. And the thing, most of the stuff and the facts that fit this case, like we know a lot from Ted Bundy himself. Yeah. But there's a lot that, is kind of shrouded in a mystery, just because some of the evidence, there's a lot of, bodies that they didn't find.
Well, yeah, because he couldn't remember.
Yeah, pieces of the bodies. Or did he not remember, or he just didn't want to say it? There's a lot of stuff that he did that they, couldn't really connect him to. So there's all these fascinating aspects of him and like really what made him tick. And yeah, even in the court trial, just thinking about that, like trying to fast forward a little bit, but like talking about just how he screwed himself.
Which you'd think, like, he did go to law school, okay? Like, he wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
He was, like, big into politics. He was big into, the local scene of, like, California at the time. Or was it California? No. He was on the political team for a politician.
Yeah, he was in the Republican Party, but even that, like if you look at some of his backstory in childhood, which I want to dive into, because a lot of things, that you talk to psychiatrists, you talk to people, and they always say it stems from their childhood, right? It always goes back to their childhood. Oh, what mommy and daddy did to you,
But he seemed like, his sister, right? Normal.
All right, well, here, let's look at this.
Okay.
And this is what I want to talk about and definitely touch in on, Bundy when he was born. And we said, he was born November 24th, 1946. And he was born, like his original name was not Bundy.
No.
And it was Colwell. And he was born in Vermont. And the father's identity for Bundy is unknown.
Correct.
They don't know. And like there's reports that he said he later on found out himself through birth certificates, but then there's also a report that says his cousin was the one who showed him and told him, like he's kind of a bastard child. So think about that. His mom gives birth, and she even says, she's not really sure. She did say later on that it was somebody from the Navy. That was a big thing going around. There was somebody from the Navy that traveled a lot and they didn't know. So who knows, right? There was another report that says the father's identity was a salesman from the Air Force, veteran Lloyd Marshall. But then his mother, again, claimed that she was seduced by this guy, Jack, who was in the Navy, and then he left. So back then, I guess there was more of a stigma if you had a child at a wedlock.
Correct.
And especially like if they can, when you always hear the bastard child, which I guess he got ridiculed a lot when he was younger. But he ended up not being with his mother. She kind of shipped him away to Philadelphia.
Correct.
To live with his
our
grandparents.
neck of the woods.
Yeah, kind of our side of the, now down here, moving down south from Vermont, went to, live with his grandparents, the Colwells, Samuel. And supposedly Samuel was very abusive, verbally and physically, to his wife, which would be Bundy's, grandmother and grandfather. And then he was also abusive to Bundy himself. And that's where they say, like, the ball started rolling. But here again...
But do you think, like, all right, so do you think he has it in him and then that, traumatic experiences happen that trigger that? Like, do we all have it in us?
I think we do.
And, like, something has to trigger that? Like, because the way I equate that is, you ever get so mad that, like, let's say you do something, like, you hit a wall and there's a big hole in it now, and then, like, you calm down and all of a sudden it's like, crap, I gotta fix that now. Like, what did I do?
Yeah,
like when I was so enraged. So do you think, like, let's say his grandfather hitting him over and over again, him seeing that over and over again, just triggers that, and that mindset never shuts off?
Well, that's the whole thing, like that the whole debate, which nobody knows, right? We could talk about this for hours about nature versus nurture, and nobody, I think, really knows the concrete answer. And I did watch a documentary where they talked about, people's brains, where they studied some serial killers that were on death row later on, that they were missing certain parts that were non-active, like in us,
Sure.
This was active. We had empathy, we had, we feel, sorrow, we feel pain, we feel all this. But in some of these people that they found, that wasn't the case.
Well, yeah, Ted Bundy, they say, like, enjoyed other people's pain.
Yeah.
Like, He'd like to see people suffer.
So that's part of our DNA, right? Like, we can't change that. And everybody has their, like, even today, right? With what's, a lot of the stuff that's going on where people feel a certain way. And I really believe that. I believe, like, in our genes and our DNA. And I think we believe a lot of stuff too with the way we eat, right? Me and you talk about, the way we eat and what we put in our body really affects us. And it does. You could see, people that all they do is drink coffee in the morning, how it affects them. Yeah, but imagine you didn't eat anything and you just kept drinking coffee and you get those spikes. And then all of a sudden, like, later you're kind of agitated, cranky, even after, like, when your blood sugar spikes after not eating for a couple hours. And then you're just sitting there and be like, I'm so hungry. And you get that cranky feeling. We all experience that. Whereas this could be something that's in him that's constantly on and he's trying to fight. And that's why they always talk about, like, the demons inside them.
Yeah.
Where he always talked about, like, an entity, where.
But do you think that's just made up in his mind, or you think that's actually just something that he feels inside of him, like in his subconscious, that is forcing him to do it?
Well, that's why I want to go, more into his childhood and kind of, experience that a little bit more and trying to understand it. And that's what, I read about, where he talks about, even in interviews, where there's some interviews that he talked openly that his parents and grandparents were, warm and loving. And a lot of documentaries too don't even go into this point where, when he was younger and he was living with his grandparents.
That he spoke to, like, entities?
No, not that. But his parents, like, his grandparents said, like, his mother was his sister, So imagine, like, years later finding out, like, all right, for all these years, this girl is your sister, and then, no, this is really your mother. Like, how messed up that has to be on somebody and their psyche. Like, we grew up and we grew up really normal.
Sure.
Like, there's a lot of stuff that, happened to us as a child that, kind of sucked.
Yeah, I mean, that Matt would push me down a flight of stairs in my Hot Wheels. That was pretty terrifying.
I didn't do that.
Yeah, remember we brought my little Hot Wheels, like, with those, like, little what are they called? Hot Wheels or Power Wheels? Power Wheels.
I think I remember the
remember
Power
that?
Wheels.
Then we brought it up to the second floor, and then all of a sudden, started rolling down the steps.
I don't remember that. I remember you pulling me in the wagon.
The wagon was great. I mean, it was a great
tipped
idea.
over, and I gotta get stitches for it.
Well, you know
That traumatized me.
yeah, that happens.
Yeah, but stuff like that, I feel like is normal. Whereas this, like, if our parents were messed up, like, imagine we grew up and then all of a sudden, Dad came up to us and said, "Well, yeah, your mother is not really your mother; it's your sister."
Yeah,
Like, how confused would you be?
Depending on what age, I guess.
Yeah, and this is what he describes. You know, he describes this, you know, that he heard from a cousin, and then later on, no, he found out himself when he went back.
Well, see, this is where like he's a compulsive liar.
He definitely is.
You know that he changes his story. I think he tries to he thinks he's smarter than he is, so he tries to manipulate people into believing what he wants them to believe. Like if you even like hear like the Ted Bundy tapes, right?
Right.
He won't talk about any of the crimes unless it's in like a third person.
Which, yeah, the one series that you watch and it's on Netflix, that's the way like the people, the reporters or the people that were writing the book, like coerced him into divulging some information, and they got him to talk in the third person, which
come on, like I mean, we all know it. I would at the end of it, I'd be like, dude, we all know it's you. Like,
yeah, but here
you
like,
just feel more comfortable talking in the third person.
No, but I don't know if it's just the psyche of him, or is it because like this is where it goes into it a little bit more for me, because when you really look at him.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like, "Oh, he's so smart. He's so smart." And then some people were like, "No, he wasn't that smart. He wasn't that smart."
Well, if he really wasn't, he couldn't even get into a good law school. So I mean,
well, yeah,
technically.
Well, that's what they all say, right? Like, and here, this is like getting back into more of his history and his childhood. Yes, we know he came from kind of a broken, home, and when his mother did remarry or married somebody, she ended up having, a couple children with this guy, and his last name is Bundy. And he took in Ted, and then that's when he changed his name. And he was still very young at this age. And there's reports that Ted said, he was great and everything was running smoothly in the household. And then there was other things where he said, you know what, he wanted no part of this guy. So you look at that, and then later on, when he's growing up and you're talking about it and we're getting into like the trial and his murderers and, all this stuff, there is things that do come back and you do see like a compulsive liar, and you do see like, and he was smart in a way. Like high school, I think like I can vouch for this. In high school, I didn't really give a crap. Like all I wanted to do was hang out with my friends, play my sports, and do anything else. But then like later on, I started to read and really educate myself. And I think I came into like my own much later than some people.
Yeah.
And I really developed a love and appreciation for history and reading all that. But like back in the day when Ted Bundy was I'm not trying to compare myself, but I'm just saying like, yes, he didn't get good grades in the beginning. He dropped out, in the very beginning of law school, and he had, trouble doing that. And then when he had his girlfriend, like we talked about, at a very young age, and a lot of people say this is like where the tipping point happened.
Well,
everything was, messed up in his childhood. He finds this girl,
which he was really happy with.
Yeah, it was great, right? Things are running smoothly, and then kind of they break it off. And
well, yeah, because he thought but he was always like insecure because he thought he couldn't provide like the life she deserved,
right?
For he couldn't provide that for her.
Well, then reading more about his history, right? We see like a transformation from a guy who can't get into law school, is flunking out, like not very smart. He's not very smart, to a guy who kind of changes himself around and gets involved in politics.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people that were in, kind of some of these parties, like the Republican Party, were like, he's a bright young man.
Yeah.
And maybe he was asserting himself a little bit more. And that's where people don't talk about. They talk about either he was really intelligent or no, he wasn't really that smart. He flunked out because, yes, just like anybody.
I mean, you can flunk out of school, but be very smart. You just maybe just don't care.
Right. And that was his first time. Like if you look at his history in itself, you see the first time when he goes around, not very good grades, kind of flunks out, drops out, all those different things. I don't know if he officially flunked out, but he just ended up dropping it. Years later, he came back and enrolled in school. And yes, he didn't get great grades, but he did get into law school. So you could say like, oh, he wasn't really that smart, but he did get in.
But here's like a thing that always like intrigued me too in looking into him. He was a very socially awkward. But in the same sense, when he got into politics, like he was in front of the camera a lot. He liked the limelight.
Right.
So like which one was it? Or did he have, a split personality?
Well, think about this, right? A lot of people hate public speaking.
Yeah, some people do. I
Like
guess.
there's a lot of times where I don't want to speak, but in your job sometimes, right? In a setting that you feel really comfortable or that you really know the knowledge or you know something and you have so much confidence in it, you could openly talk to anybody about it.
Correct.
Right? And there's sometimes that maybe like people might say that, oh, Greg is really shy. But if you really know Greg, and you talk to him and he feels comfortable around you and he knows the subject, you're going to keep talking like you're the smartest, most outgoing person in the room. And maybe that was the case with him. Maybe he was the type of person, same thing with me. Like when people talk, like sometimes I get bored and I'm like quiet and people are like, oh, he's really shy. And back in the day I was really shy. But if you talk about some history stuff, like this kind of paranormal
talk
stuff,
about
like,
Bigfoot.
Yeah, talking about Bigfoot, I'll go on for days with that shit. But maybe that was the case with him. I'm just trying to look at, his psyche. And that's really, again, what kind of draws me into his whole story.
Mm-hmm.
And what sucks and what gets me kind of upset about any of these cases, even the stuff that goes on in the news today, you always hear, we know the name Ted Bundy. We know the name, like Manson. We know, like the list goes on, right? We know H.H. Holmes. Can you name any of their victims?
No.
Like even, like think about, do you know the guys who did Columbine?
Yeah.
Like can you name any of their victims?
No. Well, because they don't get publicized as much as like the people who do the killing.
I know, which sucks. So do you think like stuff like this that was going on in the 70s with a lot of the serial killers, could it be something that, each one was building off of each other?
No, I don't think so.
We're like, oh, I need to get more than this person, or oh, I'm fucking crazy.
I don't think so.
And a lot of, if you look at serial killers, majority of them are men, I mean,
you very rarely hear about women serial killers.
There is women serial killers.
There is, but I mean, very rarely.
No, it's true. Like when we go through the list, you have Charles Manson, Ted Bundy, David Berkowitz, H.H. Holmes, the Zodiac Killer, which is unnamed.
Yeah.
And he was another guy. The list goes on and on, like Jeffrey Dahmer is a big one that everybody knows. Yeah. And there's a lot of other names that you don't know, but there are women on the list of like famous serial killers.
Yeah. They just don't get as much play.
Yeah. That you hear about. So, and even some that went on for a very long time too. So it's fascinating. And like, why do men gravitate towards this more than women?
I don't know.
Is it something just inherently in us that's just like activated? Or is it something that, I don't know, we have like that nature in us that like back in the day when we were like hunters, we killed.
Yeah, that we hunted, yeah.
Yeah, whereas many people, like, I mean, that's what people believe, right?
Sure. That evolution.
But yeah, just in his case, like, so after he did, his stints in the Republican Party in college, went through law school, which he never finished.
No.
He ended up, skipping a lot of classes, dropping out, and that was it. And that was at the end of in the 1960s.
Yeah.
Where he ended up just stopping altogether.
He did like have a couple things, like a couple odd jobs that, I don't know, the suicide hotline, crisis hotline.
That was a big thing.
Like, you're killing people, but yeah, you're.
Well,
you think that was a way for him to prey on his victims, or you think that was a way for him to maybe satisfy an appetite that he had for people's pain and people's suffering? Because that's what I thought of.
Yeah, and not too many people and not too many documentaries go into that, right?
No.
Where he was on that suicide hotline.
And he was also on a board of he was on a board for like a pattern of like killings. He was on a police panel.
Yeah, but see, did he get involved in this because he was already killing and he wanted to learn more
Yes,
about
I
it?
think so.
And that's
100%.
That's where I think he's kind of, call him what you will, you know, if you want to say he's really smart or really dumb, but that's kind of like a smart move, right? If you were a killer, like watch and understand like patterns, and he was doing that to the most part. Like maybe he couldn't control it in other areas, but for the most part, he was doing this. So yeah. Like, could he be building up more information for his next kill by taking some of these jobs? And that's another thing. Like, when you look into his past and when people look at him like, oh, he didn't look like a serial killer. Like, what does a killer look like? Like, how
Manson.
many...
Manson looks like a killer.
Well, he looked crazy.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if you look at Ted Bundy and most of his, you know, tapes, and even at the trial, he looked like he was crazy.
He did, yeah.
You know, so... But then again, you always hear about this, which I hate because you always hear about this on the news.
Yeah.
Right? When people are interviewing and be like, oh,
the neighbors,
Jimmy from next door just killed somebody. Oh, he was the nicest boy ever. You know, like he was so great. I could never picture him doing that. Everybody says the same shit, which annoys me. And then when everybody, like every documentary, like, oh, well, he didn't fit your typical serial killer. You know, like, what's your typical serial killer?
I don't know. Look like.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. You can't, and nobody else can say the same thing.
No, I think you can, because like
we have a profile.
Yeah, think about the people you work with, right? Just say who's most likely to kill somebody. You could pick out a couple.
We always have that in our head, right? Like why? Why? Because they're different,
that guy,
right? Because we're like
killer.
I remember Mom back in the day thinking I was going to be like a little crazy, and maybe I am in a weird way.
Why?
Just because of the stuff, like, she's like, you're into horror too much. You have all these, like, we made that movie when we were in high school.
Mikey's down.
Like, even the teachers said stuff. You know, they're like, oh, this is a little crazy. Because we made a film in high school.
Kill you. Back where you live, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, if I said that, I would have been brought down to the office and really got in trouble. But you know what I'm saying? Like, people said the same shit. And I don't know, is it something that you know how to manage it a little bit better? Do I have part of that brain that says, you know, all right, we got to stop at this point?
Have you ever hunted or killed anything?
I mean, we fish. You could say we hunt. Yeah. Like, I never got that like excitement, you know, and getting into like Bundy himself, like speaking about that kind of stuff, right? Where I think this was just another ploy of his, you know, if at the end of his life, before he was being executed, he talked about pornography being like the biggest thing. And I do agree in some sense what he was saying, because he was like, everybody that I'm here with on death row and like everybody that's like really a murderer, killer and everything, they all watch porn. But
everyone does.
I would say majority of dudes watch porn.
And girls.
And females too, yes.
Let us know your comments.
Do you watch porn? Let us know. Thank you.
We're going to have a poll. Maybe up on the Instagram.
Yeah, but does that make you like crazy?
No,
does that
I don't
make
think
you
so.
Like, oh my god, now I have to go out and kill somebody?
No.
Like, but a lot of
But
people...
he did like a sick thing he did. Like he would rape the women that he kidnapped and or like have sex with their like dead bodies.
Yes. So is that some type of sick fantasy that... You know how like when you hear people talk about like that, you know, when you watch too much porn, like if you did something too much, like after a while it kind of...
You get obsessed with it?
Not just obsessed, but it almost like dulls. Like there's no more excitement. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like say if, I don't know, you're part of a team, like, and our hockey team wins all the time. Every time we go out there, we win. After a while, it's kind of like, why am I doing this? You know?
I don't know, man. I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Not for me, at least, no.
Yeah, but you would have to find a new, like, driver. But I'm saying, like, in your life, like, is there something, like, every day that you win at?
Life. I win at life.
See? That's the answer is no. So you're always, you know, driving to the next,
correct,
the next thing.
Yeah.
But some people that maybe you watch porn too much and you're watching the same porn. I'm just trying to think of something, you know? And then... He's the type of person it just gets bored after a while, so he has to like mix it up. And then
so now he has to go kill people.
No, well, I'm saying now he finds like this domination, or like that kind of porn. And then maybe he gets like a fantasy for it. And maybe the first time, like when he did the killings, I don't know, maybe he was younger and started to try to experiment with some girls and they didn't like it. And maybe like, blew him off and he got pissed about that.
Yeah.
It could be any number of reasons. I don't know. And it's one of those things where you really have to look at. Now, I'm trying to get into a psyche of somebody like Ted Bundy or anybody else. I think it's a lot more difficult than, any experts or even we can do.
Correct.
And one of the things I know you touched about on earlier, which is interesting because we know his grandparents are from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of speculation of like when he first killed somebody.
Well, yeah, the speculation is when he was 14 years old, he may have killed and kidnapped somebody.
Yeah, Anne Marie Burr might have been his first victim. A lot of people say that.
Yeah,
but there's no evidence.
He was 17 at that time, I'm assuming, because she disappeared in 1961, and he was born in 1946. So.
Well, yeah, she's been missing, for 57 years now, and she was 8 years old at the time, and she was from
Tacoma, Washington.
Right. So right where he did some killings.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people believe that she was the first when he was very young. So imagine you're 14 years old and you get that.
No, he was 17.
17?
17.
47 and 61. Okay, yeah. So imagine that. 17 years old committing your first like real killing. And we know he didn't live a long life. I mean, he died when he was 42? So 89.
Yeah, 42.
So he didn't live a long life, but he did kill a lot of people. And here's the thing, like we could only speculate on this. Like nothing has been found.
No.
On this one. And there's also
nothing's been found on a lot of his victims.
Yeah, which is really strange. Like I don't know why they didn't like pursue it a little bit more or why they, didn't go into it. But there's also he has ties to New Jersey, which I did not know.
Yeah, his suspected first kidnapping or failed kidnapping in 1969 in Ocean City, New Jersey. That's when he, claims that he first tried to kidnap, but it failed. And then later, his first killing was 2 years later in 1971 in Seattle, Washington.
Yeah, and he did state, that he did, like again, kidnap, try to kill somebody in Ocean City and also Atlantic City.
Yeah, in 1969, he confessed to a psychiatrist of killing 2 people in Atlantic City, but then retracted his story later on and said no, first killing wasn't until 1971.
So okay.
Do you think he just doesn't remember or just likes to mess around with people?
Well,
why would you lie about that? You're already caught. Just tell us. Who cares?
At that point, yeah, but he was such a a narcissist, and he was it seemed like a very compulsive liar.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't he, if he did commit to that one girl, in his first killing. So that's where you try to have to put the pieces together. All right, in 1961, did he kill that little girl? He never admitted to it, but
no,
a lot of people speculate that he did, and then, all right, so let's go a few years more, between 1961, if he did kill that girl, and 1969.
There had to be a in somewhere in there. You don't just stop.
Right. Because we've seen that with serial killers. They don't just stop unless something drastic happens.
Yeah, unless they get jailed for something or unless, something drastic changes in their life.
But
we
know about,
stop.
We talked about the Golden State Killer the one time when he stopped because his family, he got married and had children. So he stopped for a period. But that
urge and that itch is always there.
Yeah, so that's the same thing. And we look at, and that's crazy to me that he has a lot of things have ties to New Jersey, which is mind-boggling to me. It's crazy.
So it always comes back to New Jersey.
It's crazy how much weird shit, bizarre, killings and UFO sightings, all that stuff happens. And our next weekday Weird, which airs Wednesday, we're talking about a UFO incident that happened here in New Jersey in Fort Monmouth, in Monmouth County, right by the studio,
right down the street.
So yeah, a lot of stuff comes back to this shit, and that's, I don't know, maybe we're in the portal of hell.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, when we get back to his, the killings and what he actually confessed to, and ended up, I guess you could say, getting credit for, like the 30 people that supposedly,
Yep.
He killed.
Yeah, and the 12 people that he decapitated. And he kept those in his house, in his apartment.
Well, a lot of people do that, right? They keep like souvenirs.
Yeah, souvenirs.
You know,
or
like,
they revisit the crime scene.
Right.
Which he did.
Which he did. Yeah, he admitted to it. Even said he had one of like the girl that he killed in Colorado.
Yeah.
That he had some type of memento of, was it a necklace or a piece of jewelry or something?
Yeah, a piece
from
of
her?
jewelry. Yep.
So it's just crazy because he went like, and he did admit like he started his killings in Washington up there, and then kind of made his way down. Like after Washington, made his way to Utah, started killing people in Utah. Then he went out to Colorado, and that's where things really get kind of hung up for him because he kind of gets caught. He gets spotted.
Yeah. And
they ended up catching him. And like you said, even when we were talking, he was just a shitty driver.
Yeah, the reason why he got caught was, they suspect like he would never have gotten caught if he was a good driver, because he got pulled over and they noticed in his car like burglary tools.
Yeah, he was driving erratically, right? With his lights off when he got caught in Colorado.
Yeah, so like he had a ski mask or like a mask that would just had like what a witness described, earlier.
Yeah.
And he had it in his car. So that's how he got like tied into, that. But yeah, if he wasn't, that mask.
Yeah, it looks like your typical TV series, like beanie that extends all the way over your face with like the eye slits out and like the nose and the mouth.
Yeah.
And
a crowbar.
He had an
rope,
ice pick, rope, all this weird
handcuffs,
shit.
Yeah. Like, why would you have that in there?
And that's the thing. Like, he got pulled over in August of 1975. So you think like if his first killing was in the early 60s, he's already been killing now for 14 years. So could that number be higher? Even if you did like 2 a year, that's 30. So I guess his number is correct. And when he did get pulled over and brought in, and this is where it just gets strange because, I mean, you just see him. Like you see him developed into this, like, I don't want to say like character, but yeah, you just see that in himself, like how he smirks at cameras, how he talks, and then everybody said the same thing. It was like, oh, well, this guy is, is a stand-up guy, very handsome, charismatic, all this crap that you hear constantly about him in every documentary, which made me sick. And I was like, all right, I get it. I get that you have to harp on this, but go into more detail. Like, go into more detail about his childhood, which they don't do. Go into more detail about some of the, like the crimes, which I know a lot of it is speculation. But talk about this. And even talking about like when he got arrested, right? He's in there, they caught him, they finally got him.
But they didn't have like enough evidence to keep him.
They didn't have him anything really.
No. They just had like suspected burglary tools.
Right. So that's what they went on, right? He was really just being charged, not really for murder, but just like kidnapping and
burglary tools,
burglary, all this other like theft, all this stuff, right?
But he did admit that he said they missed like Polaroids of like his killings, in his car.
How do you miss something like that?
Maybe it's in a secret compartment. I don't know.
Didn't he have like IDs too? Throughout like the years, he had all these IDs that he kept. Because this one, and this is where like the story gets interesting, because when they actually finally caught him, he does escape jail.
Yeah, he does.
He finally said, like in his one interview, he said he just had enough. And he's like, oh, like the guard went out for a smoke, and no one was in the courthouse, and I just jumped out the second story window. Which, this is the stuff I didn't know. Like he jumped out, got his way into the woods, and went missing for 6 days. They couldn't find him.
Yep.
And again, I don't know if it's dumb luck or is it something that he just screwed up on. Because he did say in an interview like he was tired, and he just came wandering back into town, stole a car, and he ended up like getting pulled over again. And just like turning himself in, right?
He probably killed some people, got his fix in, and then that was it.
Yeah, and then just
that's what I think.
But we don't know, right?
You don't know, no.
So they ended up bringing him back. Now they put him in a jail cell. They're like watching him and stuff. But again, is he now a person who's just really smart and just gets like caught at dumb situations, or is it a type of person that like he just looks for opportunities? And this raises another point of just like the technology.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would we have caught him with better technology? Like with technology today, I feel like DNA or something, he would have got caught right away.
Well, not if, I mean, it depends on like where you kidnap him from, or like if you break into their house. Because he kidnapped in Seattle 2 women on the same day.
Right.
At a national park, like a lake area. So maybe there's surveillance cameras like seeing that, like the parking lot. Maybe there's surveillance cameras like that the parking lot's under surveillance, so they see like the 2 women getting into his beetle or his bug.
Yeah.
So maybe that happens, but if you just kidnap somebody, you bury the body.
Well, I think nowadays, I don't know, maybe it's just I'm not that smart, but back then it seems it was a lot easier. There was no DNA.
No.
There was no like correlation or communication with law enforcement. Like once you get over the county line, state line, they don't know.
Yeah,
they don't know what state, is doing what and all that. And then another thing is, it didn't seem like he left enough evidence.
No, and he really very rarely did.
So was it just something that he knew, like that he built up over after doing it so many times, or was he just like that kind of good?
Well, they say usually,
or the detectives just sucked.
Well, they say usually the first couple crimes are your worst because you make mistakes. So that's why they say like,
yeah, but we don't even know his first couple things.
Well, that's exactly the point. So they don't know when he started. So if you go back, like let's say you did know where he started,
right?
And you go back to his first couple crimes, I'm sure there's mistakes in there that he left, clues that he left that could tie him to that. But since you don't know when that is,
yeah,
you can't really, know.
Yeah, so then again, he's in jail going through the whole court proceedings and stuff, and he escapes again.
Yep.
And it was just one of those things where I think law enforcement is dumb, and just knowing he escaped once, you would think you would leave more people on guard for this guy.
But like, I don't know why he escaped though, because the case against him was pretty weak. So like, why would you want to escape? That's the only thing.
Yeah, it raises a good point, and it also says like, in his mind he knew he was guilty, so he just wanted to get away, or he's the type of person that just doesn't want it. Like he has that itch, and he just can't. He can't sit still. He can't. Imagine you're some type of you're a person that can't sit still. Imagine you're just locked up.
Well, see, like that.
Like
I think that would be more of a punishment as him spending like life in solitary confinement than like
killing him.
Yeah, than electric chair.
Yeah, which eventually happened to him.
But I'm just saying. So like, imagine you're just sitting there in solitary confinement. You can't move. That would make him nuts.
It would. And
so that was probably a better punishment than just killing him.
Maybe eventually, like, he would have broke and he would have said more stuff.
I'm sure he would have.
Who knows how much we would have learned from it. But then again, he was smart enough to, like, look at the patterns and find out, like, the guard meets his girlfriend and, like, leaves during the night, and no one else is around. And he got down to such a small weight that he was able to crawl through his cell, through the ceiling, through like the light vent, and then he just said he walked out again. And this time, they didn't catch him there in Colorado.
No,
he ended up going to Florida.
Yep.
He finally made his way. It was like cross country. He went up to Chicago. This is one of the things which was cool, and I wish I lived back then. I know it's like morbid, but he went to like a football game, and saw his alma mater, Washington, the University of Washington play. What was it? I think Michigan. So imagine being at like the big house in Michigan, and then Ted Bundy's there just watching the game.
Just with you, sitting right next to
her? And then there was a lot of reports that said, no, he wasn't at the game. He was in like a bar and got into a dispute with somebody and almost like,
killed him.
Yeah, got into a fight, and the guy almost killed him too. Like there's that speculation, so we don't know. But he made his way across country, with a few stops along the way. He got into a car. He stole a car. He got on a train. He got on a bus. He took a airplane. Finally made his way to Tallahassee in Florida. And then this is where like the story starts to really unfold.
Well, yeah.
And I know we're not going into too much detail about like his killings. And I think if people want to learn about that, they can.
Yeah, because I mean, like we said, there's so many, like 30 that he confessed to, but I would say it's much more than that.
You think so?
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's the same thing.
because let's say you killed 30 people, or more than 30 people.
Okay.
How many are you really gonna remember?
I mean, the way he seems, he's going to remember a lot. And like he would have enough mementos that he could be like, all right, this knife killed this person. Maybe he may not remember their names. He not, remember a lot of things. And a lot of people did say he kept like books and like clippings because he was like that type of guy who, when he saw something in a newspaper
About
he'd be like,
himself.
yeah, he's like, oh, that was me, and like he kept that stuff. So I don't know. I mean, it does seem like the number could be higher.
It has to be.
But then again, it's just speculation.
Yeah,
We
you
don't
don't
know. So finally he makes his way into Florida. And that's where it kind of starts the beginning of the end, as you could say, of Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
And he, one night he goes to the Rose, what was it? The
Rose Bowl?
Well, yeah, we talked about that. That's where, his alma mater played Michigan and stuff. And he saw that game and, did that. But he went to the FSU, the Chi Omega sorority house.
So this is where it ties into getting back to when he was younger, to like that college.
Yeah.
Like
was it just some, like in that area where he lived? And
no, I really think it went back to his first girlfriend. I think that
his first girlfriend screwed him up that bad.
Yeah, I think so, man. Like, if you think about it, they were in college. Like, that's what he remembers. I think that's why he wants to put so much pain on that type of girl, because he looks at like every college-age girl as probably his ex-girlfriend.
That's possible, and I think it's a really a great theory, and maybe that's why he went into the Chi Omega house. And it seems like this was uncharacteristic for him. Granted, he did take like women in the same day and stuff like that. When one maybe would escape, he would try to find ones later. But he went into like a house where there was like seemed like you're taking a big risk. Because you're going to a house that's a sorority house. You would assume that there's going to be a lot of people living in that house. And he ended up murdering two, like assaulting some other ones. And he got away again, but didn't get away for long.
No, he didn't.
And then his last victim, which it's terrible, but was a 12-year-old girl.
Yeah, I don't know why you would do that.
Like, again, is he running? It
doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense for his MO if you really look at it.
Correct.
I mean, unless you want to talk about that first victim, as a young 8-year-old. But again, he was much younger at the time. He's not in his like 30s. He was not even considered, I guess you could say, an adult yet, to do anything. So he goes in this house. I mean, the details in this is kind of gruesome. He grabs like a log outside, beats him, and eventually he gets caught again. The same thing. He's driving in a van with like just erratically. He ends up, the cop goes to pull him over. He ends up speeding away.
Yep.
And then like gets out and starts running. The guy tackles him. A lot of people were saying like they wish he would have just shot him, there on the spot.
Why though? Because then you would never know like what truly.
No, you wouldn't.
But to everybody,
you never know if like he would escape again.
That's
and then
true.
He would have got out and then killed again.
Sure.
So like that's going back. Like when people always said like if I can go back in history, I would kill like little Hitler like as a baby. Like what if people can go back and kill?
Yeah, but would history really turn out like? Let's say you did that. So you went back and killed Hitler when he was young. Would the world history look like the way it is? And would the world be the way it is?
It would be different for sure. I mean, same thing with him. Like, how many of these ladies might have went on and did really well,
or really bad?
Exactly. You don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of. I don't want to say that because it does suck. And
yeah,
like,
it does.
This is where it gets, to me, in the psychology of it all, as far as like these women. It sucks that we glorify like a Ted Bundy, and
it does.
And then we look at like him and his name is revered, like people know when you hear Ted Bundy, like we even had like a live thing before on our Instagram. And we're like, oh, Ted Bundy. And the guy's like, serial killer. You know, it's like, you know his name,
Correct.
but you don't know some of these women's names, you know, that did get away, or, you know, that did have their lives taken from them at a very young age. And anyway, he gets caught, and this is the thing where he fucked up, because he ends up going to, you know, court and ended up getting trial. They wanted to actually extradite him back to Utah because they did have some information, and, you know, they wanted to try him there for a lot of the things, and even in Colorado. But, you know, Florida was like, no, he's being here. We have him.
I think because he killed a 12-year-old.
Right.
And also they had his like DNA at the sorority house, and his 2 hairs.
Right.
So I think that's, you know.
But most of the like if you look at the evidence, and I don't know if like he had a really great lawyer besides a public defendant, and he was stupid in his own right, because he screwed up his whole trial himself. If he let the lawyers handle it,
You think he would have got off?
I'm not saying that he would have got off, but there might have been like, he turned down a plea deal for life in prison. I mean, maybe it was something that you alluded to before.
He couldn't get locked up.
That he didn't want to be locked up for the rest of his life. He'd rather take his chances, and if he died, he died.
Sure.
You know, or he was just so stupid, and he thought like he was smarter than everybody, and he wanted to go into it and say, you know what? Like, I'm the guy. I'm going to show you that I went to law school, and I know I can like beat anybody in here. But this is where it shows like his personality and how like morbid and like psycho he really is.
Yeah, it does.
You know, even like when he's talking to the cop,
the Tallahassee.
Yeah, what was he? He was just like a regular. He wasn't a police officer from the town. He was a university cop. What I'm trying to say. And when he's talking to him, like in his trial, and he's like cross-examining this guy, and he's just asking for details, and it's like most of the lawyers that, you know, in documentaries talking like, why would he do that? Like, you want to stay away from gruesome shit.
Yeah,
like, but he's asking for details.
Well, because I think that's why he likes that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
he likes when people are in pain. He wants to hear like the most gruesome stuff. I think he enjoys that, so that's probably why.
Yeah, and he wants to hear like he wants almost like that fixation, right? You're telling the story again. You know, whether it's pornography, like where you got obsessed with, or like killing. They're describing that scene. It's maybe he was aroused by it. You don't know.
Maybe. But they never talk about him like reading books on like that kind of stuff. You know, like I wonder if he did.
Well, he did earlier on. I know in his earlier life, he did read like detective novels and stuff like that, and like true crime.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but I'm saying like, I don't know. I guess like murder mysteries, or you know,
like
I don't know.
Ask the cops, hey, I want to see like this crime scene photographs and information. Yeah. Maybe he did. Maybe he did. Yeah,
maybe
he got his hands on that stuff, and he just never said anything. You know, because like in his last tapes.
Yeah.
But he ended up, you know, the jury found him guilty.
Yeah, he went to trial. It was covered. What?
I did watch the trial, and I'm no lawyer again, but most of the evidence that they came with this trial here with the sorority, you know, Chi Omega, it was circumstantial.
Yeah,
like,
it was.
The witness that they had
couldn't really identify him.
She couldn't really identify him, even though she called him out in the courtroom.
Correct.
When they were like, oh, but then when she got cross-examined by one of his lawyers, he did it like a bang-up job. And when you're watching this, you're like, all right, well, you know, it makes you think. And like, we know who Ted Bundy is.
Yeah.
You know, but if you don't know who Ted Bundy is, and you're just watching this for the first time, and you come in, you know, ignorance, and you look at it and you look at the facts, you're like, well, there's not much to go on. So I would probably have to say like, this guy's not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, like Ted Bundy get in his own way, where he
did.
After this guy cross-examines this witness and like kind of not destroys her, but like pokes holes into a lot of her stories.
Poked out. That's what they try to do.
Yeah, exactly. And then he comes up and he's like, I don't want this guy on my team anymore. He's terrible. He's trying to like do all this stuff to me. He's not a good lawyer. And it's like, dude, this guy just, you know, helped you out, and now like you're just blowing him off.
Yeah, I mean, this was a big trial. Like, I mean, it was covered over 5 continents by like over 250 reporters.
Yeah, it was the first one that really like
was televised
in America,
like mainstream. Yeah,
and they had to move it, you know, down to Miami because of how much attention it was getting, and how much the town was invested in this. But he ended up obviously getting caught, getting convicted, and putting that sentence on because he didn't want to go for life and they sentenced to death.
Mm-hmm.
And then, not too much is talked about because this was like the first trial, but then the second trial where the little girl, and I thought they had a lot more evidence in that one than they did really in the Chi Omega one.
Mm-hmm.
But he ended up getting tried again, for that. Well, not again, but I'm saying like in another proceedings.
Correct.
And he ended up getting the death penalty again. So it was for real. But it took 10 years before they finally like sentenced him to death.
Yeah, it was preliminary was in 1979. Right? 1979, yeah.
Yeah, and he didn't end up getting the electric chair until 1989.
Yep.
Where he ended up, but yeah, just like looking at the information and the case itself, like they really went on because he in the Chi Omega thing, he bit one of the victims on the ass.
Yeah.
And they looked at it.
And looked at his dental records and everything like that.
Well, yeah, they took him out at the middle of the night, which that was like a cool story. And like he was all nervous, the guy said, and they took his, a mold of his teeth to kind of like pinpoint him on him, and then all this other stuff. But yeah, just looking at it, if he let his lawyers, I wonder if it would have turned out differently. If he let his lawyers handle it and not tried to like jump in. And I would recommend anybody who hasn't seen, just don't watch the documentaries. Like the documentaries are always going to give
just
a point
watch
of view.
The trial.
Yeah, they're always going to give you a point of view, just like us. We're always going to give you how we feel about it, our opinions, like what we think about, the person or, situation. And same thing with documentaries. They're always going to be like, I really hate this guy. This is my agenda. Or, I really love, Ted Bundy. But just watch the trials. Because what fascinated me too was how reporters would interview like women that would show up to this trial. Like we said, like he ended up getting married.
Yes.
To one of the women that was there, like that was watching and
That's
like,
so weird.
feeding him information. And they kind of, got this correspondence going, and then they end up having like a kid.
How is it like?
But here, this is what got me,
really
because these women would go to this trial and they would be interviewed, and they're like, why are you here? And they'd be like, I don't know. I just find it fascinating. He's kind of handsome. And they're like,
so weird.
And one of the girls, I mean, I'm sure she was like a college student. She was like, he turned around and he looked at me, and I thought like, oh my God, I could be next. And the guy's like, well, then why are you here? She's like, it just fascinates me.
See, but like people are fucking crazy.
And that's where I want to talk a little bit about more before like we wrap the show up, but just talk about that in itself because of the mindset.
Well, yeah, it goes back to their mindset.
And like how people are fascinated with like this kind of crime. Like we all hate, like if it happened to someone like us.
Exactly.
We all get very angry. We have revenge. We're spiteful, and like all these emotions go through us. Whereas, like if we're outside,
it doesn't affect you, it fascinates you.
This is happening in Washington, out in Utah. We're looking at this trial, and we're looking at it just from like an outsider. We're like fascinated, like, oh my God, who is this guy?
I almost equate it to you get a couple things. Like one, back in the Roman days in the Colosseum, like people love to watch people fight to the death. People like to see that. And another thing, like a car crash. Like, why do people watch NASCAR? To see the crash.
Well, that's why, like, when you're driving on the road, like, there's always traffic jams because people, like, slow down to look at the car wreck.
Because they want to see, yeah.
They want to see, like, this.
So is this like a car wreck that people love to watch and want it to be a part of? Or, like, do you think it was the women coming down there because they wanted, like, their 5 minutes of fame? Like,
no, I think, like, just our psyche in general, like us. Like, why are we fascinated? Like, why do we want to talk about this? Why do we want to do a show on this?
Yeah, I guess you can say.
Helen brought up a thing on our YouTube channel. She goes, would you want to be Ted Bundy's kid?
No, hell no.
You want him to be like, hey, little Ted Bundy, your dad killed a
no,
shitload of people.
No.
Yeah, this gets back to the whole psyche of individuals, like him in itself. Like, is he somebody that just can't control his emotions? Like, I want to know, like, my big takeaway from this is, like, he talks about in his death row confessions, right? He, like, kept putting in appeals in, and it kept getting pushed back and back.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually they were like, enough, man. Like, because he would always try to be like, oh, I'm going to give you information.
Yeah.
And this is where, like, the story really excites me, because in the 80s before he died, he was helping the FBI profile people.
Yeah.
And there was cases that he was so far, like he was like, you know, the FBI profilers would be like, we have this person and this is like our profile of the person. And, you know, when if you just say, if we look at percentages, this is not true, but if we look at percentages, they were like 85% true. Whereas Ted Bundy, when he was like, nope, this is the exact profile, he was 99.9% like accurate on his like, and they were saying like he was so accurate on the way he profiled like, you know, cases. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And is it just something because he was already going into this and like he was doing it himself?
That he had
like he knew like this
yeah.
information, and maybe it was really true. And like in his, you know, confessions, like he confessed to so much in some weird ways. In some ways he did open up and confessed a lot, but in other ways, like we said, like
he would lie about it.
Yeah, he would lie about it and go into like the third person and talk about it. So it's that fascinated me more than like I could say the killings, because the killings, it
there's
sucks,
just
man.
something wrong with you.
Yeah, like I hate that. I hate that like people, like I would never want anybody around me or my life to be taken short, you know, and like this guy's an ass for just doing that.
Yep.
Like more than an ass.
Yeah, and there's like no rhyme or reason either.
Right, but when he talks about that, like I wanted to ask you this question. I know we didn't talk about this before, even before the show or even leading up to the show, where he talks about like cravings.
Uh-huh.
Like, you know, you get cravings like for food or like, you know, like to work out. Like you have to work out.
Yep.
Or you're not like complete, you know, or like anything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's that feeling? Like he has that feeling. So like if I said you can't work out anymore,
I would get pissed.
See, that's where I look at it and I say,
so everyone's like wired differently, you're saying? So like whatever you crave, let's say it's food wise or whatever
maybe that's
I crave,
the case.
You know, they just crave that, you know, pain and suffering.
I wouldn't say it's pain and suffering.
No, like upon other people.
Yeah,
they
maybe
get
it
pleasure
is.
out of that.
They get like their fantasy is that they want to see that. They want to see like that spark taken out of your eye. Like they could see that glimmer. You know, when you look in someone's eye, you see that hope, you know, that shine, and then they want to take that away.
Maybe.
That's the thing. What really I don't think we'll ever fully understand, but that's the one thing I really wanted to like talk to you and ask you about, just because it is something that makes you think. And it makes you wonder, like, all right, is there something, again, like we said, nature versus nurture?
Yeah, or like DNA. Like, what's that book? The Sports Gene. Some people have, like, certain genes and some people don't. Like, why can some people run faster than others? Or why can people jump higher than others?
Right.
So is this, like, just, like, implanted in your DNA?
Why are people good at math and others aren't? Why are some people destined to be scientists and they're not? Was he always destined to be, like, a serial killer?
Yeah, maybe. That something inside of him wasn't right.
Yeah.
And that he just desired to kill.
Yeah.
And maybe something triggered that.
And that's the thing, like, that I'm always questioning. And, like, any serial killer, like, why? Like, does it date back to his childhood, which we know is so messed up?
Mm-hmm.
No matter how much he lies or says, like, this is the truth, you know, when you look at it.
Yeah.
You know, hey, you know.
Maybe that did set him off.
My grandfather beat me. You know, my grandfather may have raped me.
See, but then why didn't he kill, like, I don't know.
Well, I was watching Dateline last night, and they had a kid on where he saved his father, but he ended up killing, you know, like 2 neighbors.
Yeah.
So is it something along those lines? Like, the people that you're close to, you can't, no matter how much harm or pain that they conflict on you, you can't.
See, but then, like, I don't know, if the psyche was really true, right? Getting back to my theory, wouldn't he want to kill, like, older men because that's the guy who beat him?
Yeah, but we don't know what his mother or his grandmother did to him. Maybe
I get that, but I'm just saying.
Maybe the punishment.
But why was it only women?
Again, maybe it goes back to his first girlfriend. Maybe it goes back to somebody in high school that we don't even know about, that he never even mentioned, that, like,
or
maybe
do you
he
think
had his first sexual, with a person and then she, like, made fun of him somehow and he always resented that.
Or do you think he knew he could control women? Like, it was all about power to him.
It
and,
could
like,
be.
maybe he couldn't overpower, like, a man.
Yeah, but it didn't seem like that.
It didn't, but...
for his case, anyway, it doesn't seem like that maybe he wanted just to do it for power. He almost seemed like it was a fantasy to see people like die and then to have that, in his hands. I don't know.
But there has to be some reason that it's only women, though.
True. And maybe it stems from his mom. Maybe it stems from maybe his mom abused him, not in a sexual way, but maybe enough where she was like the only parent. So she didn't know how to like control this, teenager boy when, he found out that it was his mother, and she was, smacking him and putting him in like the bed and like, I don't know, or the bathtub, and she sprayed him, dunked his head under the water. I mean, there's a number of different things that you could really go into and you say, but we don't know because there's a lot of stuff that he lied about.
Yeah, you will never know.
And there's a lot of stuff he did give us information, and he did help create like the FBI's profiler, thing. And if you look at the movie Hannibal, right?
Yeah.
Or Silence of the Lambs or any of that, I mean, you could almost see correlations from that movie to this.
You could, yes.
Which now I would be fascinated to go back and watch that movie just because I didn't know anything about Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
And then now, like, learning more about him, I could see, like, holy crap, there's a lot of movies and there's a lot of things that you could say now, like, that's probably from Ted Bundy.
Probably.
I mean, as much as there was, like, pain and suffering that came out of him, there was a lot of good things, I guess you could say, that came out of him because of the profiles and helping FBI, narrow some... Again, when he helped the one FBI, it took them like 10 years to actually catch the person. And I think it was the BTK killer. And when they finally caught him, it was because of Ted Bundy, things like that. But to get in this person's psyche and to really understand them, I don't think we'll ever know. And it really ended when he got electrocuted at 7 o'clock in the morning on January 24th, 1989. And he was 42 years old, which... It was kind of cool. I would have loved to have seen that back in the day. I was only, 6 years old?
Yeah.
7 years old at the time when this happened. I would love to they were making they were lighting off firecrackers. There was a big crowd. And that's another thing that fascinates me. Like, why would people...
Celebrate his death?
Not just that, like, go. Like when people go to protest, I never understand that. When people go, I just never had a cause big enough. Maybe a lot of those people were affected. But
what if they wanted to cancel Halloween? Would you go to that protest?
Yeah, I probably would.
Well, there you go.
Well, that's the thing, because most of these people probably had nothing invested into him, when he was out there. But like, there's tons of people like out there selling T-shirts, selling like memorabilia stuff.
Well, I mean, people just try to capitalize on that kind of stuff.
I know.
You know that.
But I would love to find one of those shirts that wears like "Burn Bundy Burn," and you see
I'm sure
him,
you can find that.
and you see him in the electric chair.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool. I wish I found that before the show and wore that for the show. But yeah, this one, I don't know, man. This one really, he's a crazy motherfucker. He really is at the end of the day. Like, you look into his case and you say, Ted Bundy is just absolutely crazy.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I think he's a really good one to start off our series.
Serial Killer Series.
You like that?
I like that.
We should do... I don't know. We should think about, or we should ask people and comment below, in the show notes, anything like that, and let us know what you think, like a good next serial killer for our series would be. Mm-hmm. But I think we should definitely follow that up. So I guess your final thoughts. Like, this guy is crazy.
No, my final thoughts is like I think he always had it in him. Something triggered him into wanting to kill people, whether it be his grandfather beating him, whether it be his girlfriend in college like breaking his heart, and him just wanted to get back at that. And then that's why he targeted all those college age girls and killed them.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever find out like their true reason and psyche on these people. So you do think we'll ever figure it out?
I don't think so, unless like you took every serial killer's brain apart and like maybe they all had a certain...
I do think so.
Certain thing.
Like my takeaway from like just listening to this and listening to certain documentaries, I think there is something missing, from their brains, and something that how they always say, we don't use the full capacity of our brain.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something turned on in these
brain.
People that really set them over the edge.
But like, I would wonder if like there's a person out there that has that either turned on or turned off in their brain that doesn't kill, and why. Yeah,
that would be a cool topic, maybe for a Weekday Weird or something. But Anyway, thanks for tuning in to Case File 46, Ted Bundy, part of our serial killer series. And as always, you can find that at Nightmare365.com. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications for some live shows, for other content that we'll be posting as our Weekday Weird and anything else. And until next time,
Stay spooky.